Hello. It's so lovely to see a full room of people here today. Thank you for coming. My name is Henry. I'm the Arts Events Manager for the Assembly House Trust, and I've worked here for 6 years. I know quite a lot of you already from the Summer Open exhibition and the cinema screenings. I'm also Mary Newcomb's grandson, and there we go. And so it felt appropriate to do an exhibition at some point. And I'm pleased to be doing it at the festival with this event. And I'm joined today by my mum, Tessa. Do you want to say hello?
Hello. Right, talking to here.
Yeah.
Hello. This is Mary down at Slawden. I'm the smaller one with my sister Hannah. And this is Mary, age 67, I worked out, and Henry eating jelly.
So we're going to start with showing a 15-minute film that was made around 2004, 2003 by Caroline McAdam Clark, who is here today. Thank you for coming. It was in the Castle exhibition in 2009. Did anyone go to the Castle exhibition? So you might have seen it there. The film's about 15 minutes, and it was just after Godfrey, her partner, had died, and soon before Mary had a stroke. After that, we'll be talking and looking through some paintings, and the event should finish around 6.
Mary Newcomb was an artist with a naturalist's curiosity about the world around her, and the poet's instinct for reducing and distilling observations down to the essential. She was born in 1922 and took a degree in natural sciences at Reading University, graduating in 1943. After gaining a teaching diploma, she went on to teach science and natural history at Bath High School before marrying Godfrey Newcomb, a farmer. They moved to East Anglia in 1950, settling in the Waveney Valley, where they ran a small mixed farm and Mary set up a pottery, making decorative slipware. Back in 1945, she'd worked at a field studies centre at Flatford Mill, where she'd been encouraged by the warden, Dr. Eric Ennion, to take up field illustration. This early introduction to the business of visually recording nature stayed with her, and she began to draw and paint the animals and the countryside around the farm. And as time went on, painting more and more whenever she could. Then in 1970, she had her first exhibition with Crane Calman, and with this recognition, her career as an artist to be reckoned with began. Entering her studio was a bit like entering her mind. Here were books on birds and on bees to be used for reference. Here were the sketches, sometimes no more than thumbnail sketches, pinned up on her wall or gathered together in plastic folders. Annotations on the walls and on her drawings were used as aide-memoire, perhaps to read again the poems of Gerard Manley Hopkins or refresh her memory about a detail observed, in words, but to be refashioned later in visual form. Words were to her an intrinsic part of her painting practice, often giving a clue not so much as to what the painting is about, for the painting itself is enough for that, but a clue as to where the painting comes from. For example, in her magnificent painting entitled The Brooding Rook's Heaven, she has added an inscription to the back, which declares, "The rook remembers the red flower that she saw in the earth garden." Not an explanation exactly, but a further dimension to the painting. Mary Newcomb's vision was quintessentially English, but also unique.
These are really more or less all these rooks and things, they've got to go now because all the blue and yellow, the dandelions and things are coming in.
What made it so was the ability to apply her scientifically trained eye and mind to drawing spontaneously what she needed to draw in a manner that perhaps a formal academic drawing background might have stifled.
What's it called? This is called a cuckoo bee because it lays its eggs in this one's nests.
Harnessing this quality to an innate compositional judgment and colour sense, and allowing her imagination free rein, Mary created for us a world of visual poems of remarkable sensitivity.
I was on the ferry, and the ferry was just waiting, to go. There's a little, I think it's a bit of the mainland actually there, and these people were coming along. The tide was going out, and this is just a sequence of moving along, and the tide receding too. 3, 4, that's the 5th one. No. When they get out, or the boat, pull it up, and walk away, and they're going off to, I don't know what they're going to do. Get their bait or something like that.
Do you always start off with a little sketch like that, and then work your way up back in the studio?
Yes. I make backgrounds in that they're quite casual, and then they get to a point where they're quite interesting, and then I know exactly what they're going to be, but I'm so afraid to spoil them. Like this one is at Woodbridge. I'm walking along the esplanade there, and the concrete slabs with the patterning. I don't know if you will see it. And then the tide is coming in, but very transparent. So the pattern shows under the water. And I got so far and I dare not finish it. Of the concrete, and then the water coming over. But it's so dicey and so subtle, I just didn't quite dare to do it. And this is at South Road, quite near the pier. There was a mere, a boating place, and across here is a spit of land with all the Canada geese on. But I can't do it until I've got control of the space exactly, so I know. And there they are, all across the spit of land with them sitting on the top in the sun, all facing the same way, and then the reflections underneath. Waiting for a subject to come along, really.
So, do you in fact cover the canvas with colours?
Random, really.
Almost randomly.
Oh, absolutely random. And then they become things in themselves.
They suggest something in a way.
Yes, in fact that is going to be these rooks coming down to the earth. Behind the gallery at King's Lynn, and the ferry going across from one side to the other. They're horrible things to photograph. But I know exactly what it means. Well, I think I do. And a bit of white or something, and then a bit of orange or something, then wiping my brush across here. And suddenly they become things in themselves, don't they?
Oh, well, I started by being a scientist and teaching for a few years. And then I married and we had a little farm. And I thought if I only had the time, I would be able to paint because it was such a new experience. But we didn't have time for years. And then when the children were small, I wanted to do something like most people do. And I had done quite a lot of pottery, so I started making pottery, slipware. And then Godfrey became interested and took it over, and then that gave me the opportunity to actually paint. But I could really only do it sort of last thing at night when all the animals are being fed and all the children. washed all the eggs and that sort of thing. Now, I used to exhibit locally. We Norwich in the Assembly House, incredibly. Used to be people like Geoffrey Camp and Michael Andrews. You could hire the rooms for very few pounds a week. They weren't very good for hanging. And then I used to always go to London around the galleries. And then I saw advertised an exhibition at the Crane Calman Gallery where they had got Alfred Wallace and showing how he influenced Ben Nicholson and Christopher Wood. And I thought, well, this is rather an odd connection, but they might like the sort of thing I did. And so I kept going there and if I went to London, took a few paintings. And Andre Calman was marvellous, really. He was interested. He was always interested in painting as such, and still is, and in painters. And I suppose he thought that my things would fit in with his collection, because he actually was one of the original people who collected folk art, British folk art. But he had this rather sort of odd liking, I think, for rural things and folk or odd things, you know. It's particular taste. In fact, Andre always delights if he makes a little speech anyway, and saying how I arrived one day with sort of a shopping basket and took my paintings out of the shop. I'm sure he was making it up, really, but you know, when you go to London, I didn't take great big paintings. I would take something small. I think he rather likes this idea of sort of Grandma Moses idea. And so every time I went there, I would ring up and say, I'm coming, would you like to see some paintings? And then after a bit, he suddenly said, rather like Tessa, I'll give you an exhibition, which I thought was rather daunting in a way. And then every 2 or 3 years, he would have another exhibition and another exhibition. And so I've stayed there ever since. And people have drawn since the beginning of time. I mean, Egyptian tombs and things like that. It's always been drawing, isn't it? The painting. Well, I can't draw in the accepted sense. And all you've got is a black line on white paper. Well, if you've got paint, you can pick up some white paint and paint a white flower or green leaf. And you pick up this pencil and you draw something and you think, well, one side of it represents a human arm or something, and the other side it represents a room. And it sort of worries me, and then I think, well, nonsense, just pick up a pencil and use it. There seem to be 2 ways of drawing. Either you've got a pencil and a surface over here and you're conscious of the aesthetic side of it, or there's people like Bonnard who picks up a little stump and just is talking with his hand. Seem to be 2 different things. Do you know Elizabeth Ellicott's drawing?
I do, I spotted it earlier.
Look at that one. I think that's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen. Well, it's a lithograph, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. You know Ian Collins? Yeah?
Very well, yes.
Well,
Quite well, yes.
in his house at Southwold, he'd got that. Well, and I said, oh, wonderful, how wonderful. He said, would I like one? And I said, well, yes, of course I would. And he'd found that in Cambridge, and it wasn't signed. It was in a gallery, and he'd bought it. And so he gave it to me, and he actually went to her and got her to sign it recently.
And when are you at your happiest, would you say?
When I'm sitting down quietly in my room about to paint, I think, in my own space.
The following sequences were filmed in December 2003 on the occasion of an exhibition at the Crane Calman Gallery in London. Mary Newcomb died in Suffolk on the 29th of March 2008.
Thank you.
Now, I'm so glad you caught that, Caroline. It's very touching hearing Mary talk as well. So from the film that we know that she didn't have an artistic background. She didn't go to art school. She was a scientist by training and a naturalist by nature. And she had a very fresh approach. She was coming from outside. She certainly had an inquiring mind. We're lucky to have some diaries, some writings that she wrote, which Henry's going to talk about a bit later on. But in there, we've got a quote from there, haven't we? Yes. We went to a concert, very powerful indeed. It's easy to listen to music and just follow the instruments, the performance and the composition. But it's also possible to project oneself into the imagination of the composer, as it's possible to appreciate a message in a painting. And I think through these writings that we have a good look at what she's trying to paint, her struggles, what she's trying to say, and her joys as well, but the making of the paintings. She wanted to tell me from an early age, I remember her always wanting to tell me that Alfred Wallace painted what he knew, not just what he saw in front of him, or not just what he knew. He was an older fisherman and he painted from his experience. And he, not this one, but other ones, he's reconstructing it as if he wants to relive it. And I think Mary wanted to take us to those places and to also hold the places that she knew and the feeling around it. In Alfred Wallace's, you've got Hales estuary in one corner, and then you come along and there's fishing nets and there are boats and there's a jetty going out at St. Ives, and you go round the top. And sometimes they're upside down because she always wanted to explain that he worked flat on the table and worked around it. I've put this one up, Man Comes Out to See the Blossom. And I like that it's something you do, going seeing the blossom. You don't just see the blossom when you're passing. It's important. It's been very lovely too. And obviously, if you were in the field, you would see the hedges would be really big. But she's done it, well, this one is from As If Above. There's a little man and coming out to see the blossom. This is so the writings are good because some are quite difficult. I know exactly where this one is. It's really funny because they go from like Calman's Gallery and they go to San Francisco. What does it mean to somebody in San Francisco? I know what it means. We were up on the high plateau of Suffolk at Metfield. We had a field, but the rest of the land was flattened by Mr. Flatt the farmer in the 70s, except for this ancient track. And Mary, every day, would go up this track for her walk. When you went for a walk with Mary, she would stop and look at things as if she was taking things in. She was taking things in. I do that now. I do that now. I find I stop and look at things. So when you walk up the track, I think she's looking through the holes in the hedge, that they're not puddles, so they're holes in the hedge, because this side you're looking through the hole in the hedge and you can see the telegraph wires there, and that side you're looking out that way through the holes in the hedge. And there was a road along the top. Maybe the Black Line's a road. She might not even have explanation for everything. You always went up and touched the gate at the top, and the vetch, of course, is correctly observed there, and the other plants. And there is Mary, that little bit up there with her hat on, going round the corner to go up the track. We know that she had a very bad stroke, but she travelled in her paintings. You often went for a path or a track. And I took this into the home after she'd had her terrible stroke, as it was in a catalogue. I took this in, and she was going with her left hand, the only bit that she could use, and she was travelling again in Cork Harbour, which she loved, going round this great rock and taking me round, or taking herself round it. I think they're little birds across there. I did this walk the other evening at dusk. You're walking down from Southwold down Ferry Path. I got to the bottom there. I turned round. It's dusk. I saw where the water comes through at the Walberswick side, and I looked at the lighthouse, and the lighthouse was important for her. So Mary made the things, like Alfred Wallace, she made the things that she wanted to tell you important, the story she wanted to tell you, and she would leave out quite a lot of other things. The lighthouse was important. It's not quite that big, but it's very important to her. And then I turned round this way to where Mary and Godfrey's ashes are in Walberswick Church.
Mary wrote, "Please come and sit with me in my paintings. Please walk with me." So I'd like us to try and do that. Can I just check the people at the back can hear us both? All right, great. Mary started painting after getting married when they were living in Needham. That's in central East Anglia. They moved several times over the next 50 years, but always staying within central East Anglia. These early pictures often have angular kind of rhythmic quality with curves of plants or animals crisscrossing the patches of colour. This is Girl with a Golden Leaf and Self-Portrait in a Dream, both from the 50s. When these ones often come up in auction, and we haven't seen them before, and it's always a delight seeing more from kind of this era. They're often based with herself in nature, herself and her experience of like a lady in the landscape.
I think some of these ones, I was saying to Henry, I think some of these early ones looked like early Mary Fedden paintings, because you know how an artist has a handwriting and you can always tell whose they are. But there was just a time I got them muddled up, Mary Fedden and Mary. But these are painted when she had small children and a farm, so God knows how she got to see any Mary Feddens.
Mary joined the Norwich Art Circle and the 20 Group. I'm sure, do we have Norwich 20 Group people in, maybe? A few, yeah. I found this recently, open air art exhibition in Castle Gardens from 1952. Not sure what an open air exhibition in Castle Gardens would look like, but I'd like to see one now, maybe next year. And a stimulating exhibition of Norwich 20 Group. This is Figures in Autumn, a bit later, but still with herself in the landscape, but getting a bit kind of looser, a bit freer. And again, Lady on the Farm, looking a bit more like her later paintings with a bit of perspective in there. Still with kind of autumnal colours and yeah, these reddy browns, earthy tones. And I knew when I started working here, I think maybe from the DVD or like from the film, that Mary had shown at the Assembly House, but I didn't really know to what capacity. It was only a few years ago that I realised that once a year in the late 60s, they'd rent a room here. It does say it in there, so maybe I had missed it before. But it was for a week or two, and they would sell ceramics and paintings. And do you want to say what it was like?
Oh yeah, coming to the Assembly House was very exciting. I thought it was a palace when I was a child. Still do. Yes, Godfrey would put Hessian on the table and put all the pots out, and then we had those boards that were pegboards, and it hung with lug bowls. And I think the lug bowls were used as ashtrays for Boswells in Tombland. And I think people used to pinch them because there was always a running order for the lug bowls with Boswells. There was another place as well. And Mary had her paintings around, yeah.
In one of her folders recently, I found this clipping, which maybe the wording is a bit dated. Delicate quality of housewife artist's work. The Norfolk artist, Miss Mary Newcomb, is also a potter and a farmer's wife. Wow. Her paintings depend on the strong sense of design that potters must have, and their imagery is fed by her life in the country. I also wanted to put in this picture on the right, Tremendous Moth Night, as it's one that was mentioned later in that article. And in kind of a nice full circle moment, it's nice to bring that back and show it in here again. I imagine they were in the Hobart room. That's my idea. But they also had interest in this time. Like Mary wasn't just a painter. One thing they did was caravans. They bought and learnt about restoring and redecorating caravans, which then they sold on when money was tight. As mentioned here with the film and if you've seen the exhibition in the corridor, they were also both working on Needham pottery. This is Mary doing a slipware demonstration at the Norfolk Show in 1964. There's the book by Jamie Gillam that came out a few years ago, if you're interested to find out more about Needham pottery. And there's copies available at the back that will be available after the talk. As Mary started to paint more and Godfrey led on the pottery, her style kind of changed and developed. We're going to look through a few of those now. This is the Daffodil Store from '69, and it has a similar kind of quality to that up the track picture that Tessa spoke about earlier. Is it the sky at the top or the bottom? I'm not sure. Are you looking both ways? It's kind of like a countryside event at Mr. Meek's. I thought this worked well with talking about the Alfred Wallace connection or relation to, because the kind of flattening of the house, whilst also having a path that goes around it. And I really like those little green silhouettes for the pigs. It's a strange way to paint them. In one of the Norwich 20 group articles, it says, Mary Newcomb contributes several colourful modernistic works, some of which I suspect she painted with a smile. There was one in that article called Idle Men Unaware of Tigers. It made me think of Little Devil Cow and the Demon Diggers. It's also got the path round. You can imagine her tracing a finger round, but then the path vertically goes off out the top of the picture, and there's trees horizontally left and right, as if you're walking down it. You can see it both ways. There's also the cornering road sign, which we know and understand, although it's in a field, but it was the important thing to include. And I don't think she was painting funny paintings, but I think some were done with a sly humour. This is red fox run through the house. I guess like the lighthouse one, maybe not everything's quite to scale. Thinking about the themes that she worked on as well in the 80s, she had a meeting with the poet Kathleen Raine, and they had group headings for a book endeavour. These included untoward events, odd events that will never happen again, Wales again and again, river trips, the companionable countryside, strange farm machinery, and oddly shaped and bulging suns. And odd events that will never happen again is something she came back to a few times in her writing, and always makes me think of The Woman and the Pig Disrupt the Hunt. It's quite a strange painting with this kind of bordering edge, framing it in a tiny little house in the background, and this woman and the pig, and it's all planned out on the quick, sketchy biro drawing. And some of these working drawings, they're all on scraps of paper. They're quite hard to link to paintings, but this one was quite complex. Some are a lot more simple, and six-legged horse. The dog and the grasshopper.
Yes, she had an Eastern Arts grant, and she said she wanted to travel, and she would go to Wales 3 times in 81. And she went to Wales 3 times on the train, there and back, there and back, there and back. She liked trains. I remember her coming back from one really, really exhausted, and she said she had drawn everything and hadn't missed a moment. So she didn't miss anything out on that. And this one I find interesting. I think it's got like Japanese perspective, where it's got different viewpoints. You're going down the road to the houses, and then you're going another viewpoint into the mountains. The way that Japanese screens would be long, and then you would have different perspective points going up. I love this one. It's a little chapel, obviously, a little chapel in the valley, and you've got a spot of light on the distant hills. And she writes on that one, in Wales now the sun would be pushing to shine in the gaps between the mountains, and small adiabatic clouds would be sitting like white hats on all the mountain peaks, stretching out into the distance. She came from Wiltshire, and she once said to me that she missed having hills, because if you've got hills, and we didn't have hills in Suffolk, if you've got hills, you've always got some light moving across them. Here, she went to Scotland, she went to Orkney, and here she's drawing the cloud moving across. I think this is Scotland. There's another one's with Glencoe. And it says there, the cloud, what does it say? Cloud? Bending over a hump, the way that clouds do.
As well as travelling around the UK, she also travelled a lot locally. And hopefully you've seen the exhibition already. If you haven't yet, there's the exhibition on in the corridor until the end of July. But in it, I've included some of the working drawings of things like river trips that she loved, lots of small sketches done from boats. These are newspaper clippings of hers from How Hill and near Salt Pass. From a similar trip, this is a view from the deck of a small river steamer that used to go from Norwich down the River Yare in the evening. When it turned for home, the evening quiet settled on us, and people knelt on the seat to watch the sun sinking. There's also the deer drawings in the corridor from Holcombe Hall, and this is a watercolour to go with them. And everyone loves the seals at Blakeney. I forgot that was also shown in the film, but it's nice to show it in full on the screen.
Yeah, she didn't travel very much. She never went on an aeroplane, but she did get to the south of France quite late in life. And I know it's a cliche, but I think the light there really changed her paintings. We will see. This is a huge painting. Well, huge because we don't know any scales here, but this is pretty big, quite tall. I mean, they're quite hard get up up the spiral staircase. We'll see later on. She paints. She writes every. Does it say there? Every butterfly has a shadow on the ground.
No, yeah, it's on a different working drawing.
Okay,
not from France, but it says yeah.
I can't read it from here. And completely different landscape, and completely different light. I think these are lovely, these paintings. Beating down blue, obviously not Suffolk.
Now we're going to look at the diary. Andre Kalman from Crane Kalman recommended that Mary kept a diary. Not a personal diary, but one about painting and the way that she sees the world. It has kind of influences, inspiration, has about painting, it has about colour, and recording of the seasons and things happening. On January the 1st it says, I wanted to say these things and to record what I have seen, to remind ourselves that in our haste, in this century, we may not give time to pause and look, and they pass on our way unheeding. And like Tessa said earlier, she did walk slowly and did stop and look at a lot of things. Some of the pages are quite busy and have a lot of information on. Some of the ones with the least on are times like Christmas.
Christmas Day, nothing can be done. What's Boxing Day, time passing,
And nothing done.
and nothing done?
We thought we should put in something from this time of year as well. This is from the 7th of May. We went late to the river, which was overhung with leafy trees. The sun was setting to the left, and very, very quickly the remaining light was draining away. Into this graded green gently rowed a boat containing 2 pink ladies. The rower was in plastic viridin and the boat was cream. Within a few seconds, they'd glided into the dark brown shadows. And you can see, because she used the same diary for the 2 years that she wrote, and so it says drawing 87, and she's gone back in 88 and written that oil painting was done in 88. This is the watercolour. Some of you might know the oil painting. It's in the Gunton Arms. There's a couple of hers there. She had 2 ways of drawing, from trains and buses, or sitting in one place and drawing events that happened around her. This is from 13th of May. I thought we should put in today. The White Park Cattle. These are her photos that were in her clippings. She wrote, "There was once an eclipsing moon hanging over the White Park cattle as they stood straight-backed, unmoving in their small carving paddock. No one on the bus appeared to notice that the newly risen full moon had a large bite out of it, or the statuesque cattle were as made of marble, or the little house with its chimney was at Edward Hopper House, alone in the landscape, and on a small mound between the cattle and the moon. I tried to paint it, but I did not succeed. She wanted you to see what she saw, and she wanted people to notice."
Oh, yes. Somebody once said they really liked her nervous little drawings. Mary said, no, she wasn't nervous. She was on a bus drawing, and she had these tiny little sketchbooks from Jarrell's. Not sketchbooks, notepads from Jarrell's. And she'd do all these little scribbles with a biro. It's a bit wobbly.
There's several bits in the diary like this where she says that she didn't succeed in painting, or it was difficult to do. She did paint the White Park cattle twice, in 88 and 93. I think Tessa was saying they are still there on the same road. Maybe not the same cows.
Related.
Some parts of a painting are explained in a single brushstroke, and I never touched them again. Some parts are a battle, perhaps to explain an area of intransigence, a floating solidity, quiet or noise, an area to meditate on or pass through, noise or jarring or a place to rest.
I find that, I don't know how we're reading this painting. I think it's a magpie flying up over a wall and then going along the top. I don't know. But I like the fact that she's writing noise or jarring, a place to rest. She's bringing other things in than just the magpie. Feelings. I think this bit of, before we read it, I think this bit of writing is to do with a bigger painting, because she had to, those big paintings, she had to bring up the spiral staircase at Wood Farm, and she always stood them against that blanket box on a piece of wood like that. And then she would lean forward on that little chair, and she says, I tilt it forward at the base for stability. This seems to give me a foothold actually within the canvas about 3/4 of the way down, a little platform of my own making. I have to push in and make a little platform for myself on the stage so that I have a measured amount of controlled space all around me as an actor might have and feel. This gives me the ability to reach out to the left and to the right, behind my shoulders, and so that I am part of the action, in the trees, on the water, in the air, with the figures in the landscape, totally involved and living in there. She made places that she lived in. We've got this one, you've got this one in the castle. Yes, it comes out sometimes. So you're going into the big top. And this one, she's gone into that area and she met a snake, and I know that she was frightened of the snake. We know from the film how she coloured the boards. I'm trying to paint the afterglow of the sunlight by working with green across a glowing red, orange, blue, green random background. I love that. You know, when we've had a hot day and the land seems to contain the warmth. I think there's the woman lady in the unsprayed field, she's there. I think she said she saw that passing Tivertshall on a train. No blacks, not black, not charcoal, not black brown. Fight back, no one else can do it for me. I've tried today to make a colour which exists in trees or bushes against the sky when the light's almost gone. It contains brown, red and green. Brown for the stem, red for the life that's left, and green for the leaf memory. She's bringing more into the paintings.
In 2016, I started working with Crane Calman Gallery and Land Humphreys on putting together a book, working with the diary entries alongside working drawings and paintings. And it became this book, Drawing from Observation, which also has chapters written by Tessa. It was a nice way of putting together those things. And as I said earlier, the diary entries are only from 2 years, so they don't always correlate. And the drawings often aren't labelled, so it's very hard to link them to solid things. But this came out in 2018, and there's copies available at the back after the talk, and they've got £5 off the shop price. In a similar way to doing this talk, with doing the book, it was very hard to work out what to actually include in it, because you have to constantly trim things down because there's only a certain number of pages. And so that's when I started running the Mary Newcomb Archive Instagram account as a way of sharing things, more things that were relevant to the season or the month, but over a longer time period. And often when we find things in auction as well, it's nice to be able to share those, or from old catalogues, images we haven't seen. So that's been a really nice space. And if you do have Mary pictures yourself, please do let us know and send them to us, because it's always nice to see them. We might not know about them. I saw a couple of drawings at the weekend, which I didn't know someone had.
So, yes, we know that she had a fresh look at painting, and maybe she had the 20 group, but there was a whole time, like when we lived at Wood Farm, that I don't think she had that many people that she discussed things with. And I remember Ian Collins writing, maybe it was 35 years ago, about Mary being an ecologist in the EDP. And I thought, oh, that's quite a grandiose word, because we weren't used to ecologists then, but we are very much now. Maybe she was an ecologist because of the way she encouraged us to take note. Later in life, she met Ronnie Blythe, and they were very sweet together, her and Ronnie. And he put her drawings in one of the books. And then through him, Richard Mabey, quite a few naturalists. So maybe the ecology came in. Richard Mabey, Roger Deacon, various people, and various artists used to come and see her then too. Physically, she was quite isolated at Wood Farm. That was our field, and the farm is there behind the trees. And when it got dark in the evening, the sun went down, 3:30, 4 o'clock in December, and it was dark. She didn't sleep well. I think quite an uneasy life, I would say. She got up at night and she plotted the phases of the moon at one time. This is a large double sheet thing. I've got this still. This is Wood Farm. It was fairly chilly. The wind used to blow through the wattle and daub. I remember being up there. Very cold.
I love this picture. It's Mary when she was living in Newton Flotman when I was a child. And I remember the size of those gunnery leaves. But yeah, it's nice to see that they were actually as big as I remember them being. when I was a lot shorter. But working with Mary's archives has impacted both me and Tess, and we've discussed this quite a lot, of mostly positive, but also sometimes it's hard to make your own work when you're so in the head of someone else. It has really made me walk slowly and look at things and try and record things and take note of things in a way that I wasn't doing before. And especially when I work quite heavily on it, like organising this exhibition, I do find myself doing that more and looking at hedges and seeing what's going on. And we were both discussing that we start noticing Mary moments, we call them, of kind of like things that, once you started seeing her paintings and working for it, maybe that's something that will, other people might have the same response. I don't know. One of the quotes in the diary that stays with me the most is, "I've been drawing the reflections of a bank in the water. It was difficult to do, and I only partly succeeded. But by drawing, I've looked, and by looking, I've remembered." And that last bit is the kind of the important bit for me, and I do think is very true. But also because it contains that bit of, it was difficult to do, and I only partly succeeded, which I think is kind of important, that it's not an easy drawing, sketching something, but she's tried and she's got it down, and she can paint it now because she's drawn it and therefore remembered it. I also guess I'd like to think, what do her paintings do for us now?
What do our paintings do for us now? How do we see them, or whatever you call it? She hasn't painted for 20 years, 22 years, I think. This is a very late painting because we saw it in the film. I love this one. I've put some up here that I like. I like the vaguer ones, the not quite so explained ones. So we're just getting near the end, and we're just looking at a few of these. Daffodils in the Wind, probably March, April. If you remember back to the bitter winds and everything. Suddenly the countryside has got yellow in it. And if I painted that, I would have probably painted it against blue or green grass, but Mary's painted it on yellow. The countryside is yellow. You can't paint wind, you can only paint the effect of it. So it's got quite big ideas behind that. Shadow of a Small Rare Plant, the Botanical Gardens. I don't know where the Botanical Gardens are, and I actually don't know where the small rare plant is. But it's a wonderful, vague one. This is, again, a big painting. One of the French, from France, obviously. I think she went twice to France. I stood next to her at Kalman's gallery once, and I could hear her saying to somebody, "I don't really understand abstract painting," she was saying. You know, they're just colours moving across each other. And I was looking at not this one, but there was another one, and it was completely abstract, to be honest. But to her, it wasn't abstract because she was trying to tell you something. She was trying to tell you in that one, it was called Mist Drying Up Over the Sea. You're in the south of France. It's going to be a very hot day, and the mist is drying up. And to her, that was the subject. That's what she was telling you about. Out on the Marsh. The Green Bridge, I love this one. It isn't a particularly old one, but I think there's something about later paintings for people that they, if it was a Turner, you would say sublime because it would be Westminster Bridge and there wouldn't be anything more to say at these extreme paintings. But when people get, and composers and writers, they often get to this time when they're very brave and they're quite free, and they drop the conventionality of having to explain things. You don't have to explain everything. It just is. And Mary's painted a very ordinary green bridge over bit of water, I think. But I think this has got some feeling, a good feeling in it. We're going to end with, yes, another great big painting at Wood Farm, where the sun went down and it got dark, and Mary didn't like coming in, and she would stay out catching the last bits of sun and the last birds.
We're going to end there, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you, Tessa, for joining me, and Caroline for the film, and for the Trust for supporting this event. And mainly thank you to Mary for the paintings. Do stay if you'd like for discussion or for looking at the exhibition. I'll leave the slideshow on that was earlier with paintings on the screen, and the bar will be open. Thank you.